Hello everyone, I hope you're doing well today. I thought I'd make a video talking about my grievances with Spiral Abyss. I've been able to 36 star it for a while now, but I wanted to talk about why I'm continuing to enjoy it less and less, and the things I would do to fix it. I've had these feelings ever since the last rotation of the Spiral Abyss, when I realized that they were adding enemies that kind of made me hate doing the rotations and doing floor 12. But what really made me want to make this video is the rifthounds that just got added. I'm going to talk about the things that I think make for a fun type of enemy to fight in a speedrunning format, such as Spiral Abyss, what I would add to make enemies that do not work well in Spiral Abyss have an actual place in in-game content, and then I'm going to talk about the characters that suffer from the way that we have Spiral Abyss set up right now. So the main enemies that I'm going to be talking about in a negative light is going to be the rifthounds and the smaller ruin guards, the ones I think that are called ruin sentinels. These have a couple features and sort of checkboxes, if you will, that they mark off that make them absolutely infuriating to fight. So the things we need to check off is, can it be crowd controlled? Two, can you manipulate its movement despite that? And three, is it entirely luck dependent? So for most enemies that are smaller, you can manipulate where they are with a crowd controlling unit. Typically this is an animo character such as Venti or the animo main character, just to name a few examples. Say the hilly churls and then the human-sized characters can typically have this happen to them. The next thing is the character that you're fighting or the thing that you're fighting actively trying to break combat? This, for example, say a cryo-sentient mage, just a sentient mage in general really, they're going to teleport away from you and it's very annoying. That's an example of what I mean for this section. And the next thing is there anything you can do about it? So, for example, a cryosensient mage teleports away, but you can still go over to it and crowd control it back into the rest of the enemies to continue your damage uptime. These are the criteria that we're going to be talking about. And as an added note, the health bar of the enemy generally is not that big of a deal, but it is magnified in terms of its annoyance when the correct check boxes have been checked off from the things I mentioned before. So, the name of the game of the Spiral Abyss is that it's a speedrunning format, meaning that you need all of your stuff to hit as many enemies as possible. Well, obviously some enemies are going to be able to be manipulated through your own moves such as skills and bursts, but then there are ones that will not, simply because they are too heavy for the crowd control. And that within itself is not a bad thing. It means you need a different strategy to approach it. A type of enemy that I think succeeds at being too heavy for crowd control but is still fun to fight in a speedrunning format is the Geovashop. So the Geovashop is too heavy, but it is extremely hyper aggressive, and typically they put two of them together in the Abyss. So what this boils down to is that you can't really use a character like Venti to fight these reliably, but what you can do is position yourself in a way where both of them will run to you, they'll be close enough together that you can start doing your damage, and then from there it becomes a battle of wits, iframing and dodging their tremors and their rolling attacks to the best of your ability to keep your damage uptime up. So what makes this fun is that you are having the action brought to you by the enemy, despite the fact that you can't move them yourself. But technically you can move them yourself, because if you are standing on one corner of the battlefield, they will chase you. They are very aggressive creatures. This is what makes them fun to fight. They will bring the action to you, and because you're being timed on this, you want the action to be right where you are. Now let's talk about the enemies that actively break combat that I think are fitting for the Spiral Abyss. The Sentient Mages, the Fatui Agents, and Mirror Maidens. So these will either teleport away or effectively teleport away, because Abyss Agents, or excuse me, the Fatui Agents, don't teleport, but they do become invisible and run around for a while. What makes these enemies okay in terms of the grander scheme of Abyss is that you can crowd control them. It's not luck dependent on if you do this or not. It is somewhat luck dependent on when they decide to teleport, but it does not take long to get them back into the hobble of characters you're trying to kill and continue your damage uptime. Now I'm going to start talking about the bad examples of these things. The characters, the enemies that have been in the Abyss that are extremely unfun to fight because they do not mark the boxes that we just talked about. So the smaller Ruin Guard, the Ruin Sentinels, and the ones that look like triangles that float, whatever those are called, those are the ones I'm talking about. You cannot crowd control them because they are too heavy, but unlike Jehovah Shops, they do not approach you. They have a move that will randomly teleport to you, if we're talking about the one that kind of looks like Onyx the Pokemon, the very lanky ones. They have a about 30% chance or so that they will actually use the move where they come to you, which means that you have no influence on what they do except for rolling a dice and getting a lucky side of it that they actually come to you. There's also the ones that are floating and triangle shaped, where they also have a similar chance of teleporting somewhere around the distance between the surface of Earth to the moon. They'll teleport about that distance away. And it is very frustrating because if you've already started your damage combo, since they don't really stun, they can do this at any time and they will not come back to you because they are a ranged enemy. And I didn't really give any examples of the luck factor because these enemies that we're talking about are the ones that take into account the luck factor. Since you can't manipulate them to come to you because of their aggression, and they're too heavy for you to manipulate with your own skills and bursts, it means that them coming to you or deciding not to teleport away is completely luck dependent based on what the AI decides to use, meaning that they are extremely frustrating. The amount of runs that I had fail on the final two chambers of last rotation's floor 12 was a staggering amount just because the lanky Ruin Sentinels decided not to teleport to me, or because the triangle floating ones decided to teleport a whole football field away from me. Now we get on to the rifthounds, and these are the enemies that made me inspired to make this video, because while I think conceptually they are really neat enemies, I like how the corrosion mechanic works because it means that there's a heavier emphasis on healers. In terms of every other aspect to them, I find them to be the most egregious characters that have been added to the Abyss yet. First off, you can't really manipulate where they are. Sure, they have a staggering animation for taking too much knockback, in which case, yes, you can technically push them in a direction you want to, but they have a pretty high threshold before they start getting knocked back, and it's not reliable to do when you are having to bully your way through the million plus HP that each single one of these rifthounds have. Next thing is that they stand still for a very long time once they've used a move. This on its own is not a bad thing, just like every other aspect we're talking about. What makes this frustrating is that once they've used a move and they are not together, not close enough for you to do your damage uptime on both of them, there's essentially fucking nothing you can do about it, because they're going to stay away from each other. One decided to use one move and the other one decided to use the teleport move. Now they're too far away for you to hit both of them. Tough luck. You either restart or you just do half as much damage as you could do. You will not be able to influence them to come back near each other unless you get lucky. You stand equal distance away from both of them and they both decide to use the same move, which is extremely frustrating because the AI is going to use whatever the fuck it wants to. And the absolute most egregious thing that I have not talked about yet, because generally, similar to having clean drinking water, it's something you don't really think about or notice until there's something wrong. And that is that this enemy is buggy as fuck, okay? The leaping back continued into a forward bite attack that they use generally the majority of the time. They, for some reason, leave a ginormous collision box on the ground where they were standing. So they can eject themselves out of your damage combo at any time because the first half of this attack animation launches them backwards. But you also don't have the ability to go chase them down because apparently they parked an invisible car in front of them as they leaped backwards, and you can't get around it unless you do this huge side turn to the left or right before running at them, which will have wasted so much time that you might as well have not done it. So, this is one of the most frustrating things. I can't think of a single enemy in this game that has something so blatantly broken to their kit. Now, there is a chance that this gets addressed and it is going to be fixed at some point, in which case, good on Mihoyo for actually releasing it or having fixed it to how it should have been released. But the idea that you cannot manipulate where they are unless you get very lucky, and the reason we're talking about manipulating their position is because the Thunderwolves there are two of the big ones on each stage. Ridiculous amount of defense, ridiculous amount of HP, so having both of them get hit at the same time is crucial. You cannot manipulate where they are unless both of them happen to use the same move. You cannot crowd control them with the crowd control units in the game. They can eject themselves out of their combo at any time they want to, and they park an invisible car in front of you as they do it, so you can't chase them down. This enemy is beyond infuriating, and they will sometimes use a single move, and then you just have to reset the entire run, because you just literally cannot do anything about the odds that you were given. This is the type of stuff I wanted to talk about in this video. All of these features are not just annoying on their own, they are extremely frustrating in a format where you're racing against the clock, okay? And there are the right way to do enemies that are trying to break the flow of speedrunning, which is ones that have a caveat to them breaking the flow of combat, such as the Sentient Mages. They are crowd controllable. That is their caveat. Yeah, they can teleport away, but you can get them back into your damage. So how would I fix this issue of enemies that clearly have no place in the Abyss? And this is not even mentioning enemies that spend copious amounts of time invincible. I'm not really going to talk about that in this video, but take the Hypostasis, for example. Almost any of them, really. They all make you wait copious amounts of time to essentially play red light, green light with your damage, and it's very annoying. So what do we do to fix this and make a Spiral Abyss that is more fun while also giving ourselves more to chew on? I think that there needs to be a Spiral Abyss-esque content in terms of difficulty and also being in-game that resets, that does not have a timer on it, and is attrition-based, whether it be a infinite game mode, a game mode that is similar to the Labyrinth Warriors event, or some mix of both. There are characters in this game that clearly have a more attrition style to them, and they don't do well in this game at all because all we have to do is speedrunning. The biggest example I can think of is Noelle. Upon some others, let's talk about Noelle first. So she's a character that shields, heals, and does damage. She's very appealing to many players because she's very easy to pilot, and she feels very reliable, because she is. However, unless you have a absolutely insane amount of investment in your Noelle, she suffers in the Abyss, especially when the effects of the Abyss, which thankfully are in her favor this time on floor 11, are against her, or just not helping her as it is. In the Labyrinth of Warriors event, however, Noelle was a very solid pick, because she could keep herself safe, heal your entire team, and since there was no timer, she didn't have to worry so much about her damage output. Sure, of course you do want her to do damage, but Noelle is a jack-of-all-trades, master-of-none type character. Other characters that benefit greatly from attrition-based gameplay are the designated healers. The only healers that do really well as of current are the ones that it's not the main focus of their role. Bennett kinda does everything. His healing capabilities is the cherry on top of him passing damage and being an amazing battery. Diona is the best cryo battery you could ask for other than Rosaria maybe, but she also provides a heal and a shield, which allows you to keep from getting interrupted as you're doing your business trying to get your damage out. Designated healers like Barbara, Chi-Chi, and Kokomi don't have quite as much of a home in most teams and in the Spiral Abyss because they're not focused around damage. That's not inherently a bad thing, but because we have so little to play and chew on as of the current moment, it is an issue, because these characters really don't offer anything that the game is demanding from you in general. To wrap up my thoughts, I think that all of these things we've talked about are not, in quotation, issues on their own. It's just that in their current form, it leaves a lot to be desired in terms of a fun aspect to the speed running aspect of this game. What really needs to happen is there needs to be a new form of Abyss level difficulty that does not have a timer, so these enemies that are inherently more stally, inherently more annoying to fight, are not forcing you to pop a blood vessel to fight them. Enemies that would find their home here are any of the bosses that spend a lot of time invincible, or the rifthounds, or the ruin sentinels. Any of these enemies are extremely unfun to fight in the Abyss. But assuming that we had a form of content that was not based, in terms of the score, was not based on your time, these enemies would be able to work just the way they are, and something that does not make them the most painful experience you could ask for in this game. Because if you don't think the rifthounds are bad, and you haven't played Abyss, play the current Abyss. I swear each single one of those rifthounds have the HP of the Magukanki. It's actually nuts, and probably more defense too, honestly. More than anything, I just want us to have more to do in this game, like everyone else, but I want it to be something that is drastically different than what we already have, and is able to be sustained for a long time. Because there are enemies that don't have a home in the Abyss as of right now, that are in the Abyss and make it extremely frustrating, but would have a home somewhere where it was by a different rule set. And there are characters that would also thrive in a non-timer format that suffer as of the current moment. Of course, damage output in a format like what I've been talking about is important, but it's not the entire story that you're talking about. If you have any ideas or any sort of feedback you want to talk about, please leave it in the comments. I'd love to read it. I will be seeing you guys around. Have a nice one.
Decided by destiny. Embrace the ice. Whirling snow. Windblade. Delves into my opponent. Sketch. Upon you. Let me scrub. Kamisato art. Sumetsu. Whirling snow. Delved into. Take flight. Sketch. Written in the stars. Let me scrub. Embrace the ice. Take flight. Delves into Diana Special. Fate is upon you. Shadows of Kamisato art. Sumetsu. My opponent. Let's light it up, everybody. Animal hypostasis simulation. Absorption test. Stand clear. Eat this. Out of the frying pan.
Riptide. Ha. Yeah. No time to lose. Za. You can run, but you can't hide.
Ha! Everybody stand back! Embrace the ice! Decided by destiny. Delved into Kamisato art. Sometsu! Whirling snow! Take flight! Wingblade! Be gone! Fate is upon you. Let me scrub. Embrace the ice! Whirling snow! Delved into... My apologies! Sketch! Can't handle your drink! Wingblade! Decided by destiny. Let me scrub. Sakura swirl. Take flight. Shadows of whirling snow. Kamisato art. Sometsu. Going in. Enhanced animal module 75. Absorption test. You're toast. Nice and spicy.
Riptide. Yeah, yeah. Za, ja. Za. Ja.
Adventure time. Don't worry. Out of the frying pan. It's... Teamwork is dreamwork. Stand clear. Absorption test. Ruba, get them. Let's light it up. Yeah. Everybody stand. Hey, yeah.
You can run, but you can't hide.
Out of the frying pan.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going in. Stand clear. Animal test 63. Eat this. Prepare to be blown away! Fate is upon you. Let me scrub. Embrace the ice! Shadows of... Take flight! on you! Sakura swirl! Take flight! Windblade! Let me scrub! My apologies! Yeah! Shake your hands, stir! Written in the stars! Embrace the ice! Take flight! Let's light it up! Everybody stand back! Animal hypostasis emulation! Absorption test! Hey-ya! Nice and spicy!
Riptide! Yeah! 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 No time to lose.
Teamwork is dreamwork! Animal test 6308. Stand clear. Animal test 6. You're toast!
Tidal wave.
Stand clear. Swirl. Mark. Adventure time. Why do they never miss? I'm going in. Eat this! Absorption test.
You can run, but you can't hide.